and it will only get worse. And then he goes on ranting about other stuff. I mean, Louise Mensch, when Trump does this kind of thing...
But I think he's right, Piers. But hold on, I think he's right in that.
Yeah, I do. Honestly, calling Kamala Harris a communist is just as bad as calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy. And I've been persuaded for once
That's not
by
true, because she
Joe. I've been
actually is. Her
persuaded by
policies
Joe.
are communist.
I can condemn what happened yesterday and still believe Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. Don't say that those of us who do believe he is a threat want to take him out.
Trump-sympathizing political commentator Piers Morgan hosted his first U.S. politics panel since the second failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And full disclosure, Piers Morgan surprised me here because he actually hit his MAGA panelists with criticisms not only of Trump's own incendiary rhetoric, but also of Trump foolishly attacking Taylor Swift and potentially costing himself the election as a result. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to play from this most recent episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored, which I thought was going to be a train wreck, given that the predicate event was a second failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which thank God failed. But Piers Morgan, if you follow this channel or if you follow Piers' own content, you know Piers Morgan is pretty heavily biased in favor of Donald Trump. But this is the second time in just a few days, if not a few weeks, that he has actually surprised me by being just a bit more even-handed in his criticism. I was kind of surprised. So we're going to play some of these clips, and not only is Piers hitting his MAGA panelists with some reasonably tough questions, not the toughest questions, he can certainly go harder, and he's still more favorable towards Trump than not, but actually throwing some hardball questions towards them, criticizing Trump publicly. And former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh steps in also to shut down former MAGA attorney Jenna Ellis. The whole thing is pretty good, but we're going to start with this one in which Piers Morgan makes some criticisms about rhetoric.
Go on. Do you see a problem there with the language that both sides have been using? I mean, yesterday morning before Trump went to the golf course, he tweeted completely out of nowhere, "I hate Taylor Swift." Right? I don't know how that helps. I mean, we can all laugh, but Taylor Swift has millions of impressionable young fans. What if one of them's a bit of a lunatic? What if one of them goes, "Really? Well, I'm going to shoot you"? In other words, shouldn't it be incumbent on all candidates and everyone in the political world now, given 2 attempts on Trump's life, to dial everything down, to go back to debating issues, not saying things like, "I hate the biggest pop star in the world," or on the left, "Trump's the new Hitler"?
Yes, Pierce, everything should be dialed down. I would argue that, these days, there's no greater purveyor of hate and a bigger inciter of violence than Donald Trump. Let's be clear.
That's Joe Walsh, former Republican congressman. He's 100% correct. We'll play more of what he has to say in just a minute. But again, I credit where it's due. And it's sad that I'm so impressed by this because, quite frankly, I shouldn't. Piers tends to still both sides these issues. But the fact that he is publicly criticizing at length Donald Trump's own incendiary rhetoric and his foolish attack on Taylor Swift, I think is something to note, and something which is no doubt going to trigger Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans who are used to a total pass by somebody like Piers Morgan. Another clip in which Joe Walsh, again, former Republican congressman, whom I interviewed, by the way, at the DNC. There is at least parts of an interview up on this channel, which you should definitely check out. He's got more to say about this as well.
Look, I believe Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy. I believe that, and I say that, and I'm not, and again, I say that knowing there are nuts out there, who could do anything. But I believe that, and a lot of Republicans who are voting for Harris believe that. Pierce, Donald Trump said an hour ago that he blamed Harris and Biden for their rhetoric that led to this latest attempt. And you know what Trump said? Donald Trump said today that Democrats are trying to destroy our country and they are the enemy from within. You talk about dangerous rhetoric? Come on.
Let me bring in.
Exactly. This is good. I'm glad Walsh is there to provide pushback because the temptation is to hyper-focus on the times that Democrats correctly refer to Donald Trump as an authoritarian threat to democracy, which again, he is. And, the panelists make clear that this is something that should be able to be stated, to be articulated, especially when it's such a defensible position. And you can do that without simultaneously endorsing or permitting an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Again, we live in an advanced democratic republic in which, as part of the social and political contract, we forfeit any claims to vigilantism, no matter how emotionally satisfying some people out there might find political vigilantism or just vigilantism in general. The fact of the matter is it has no place in an advanced democratic republic. There's an election on November 5th, and eligible voters should register to vote, and they should make plans to vote, and then they should vote Donald Trump out. They should deal him a political defeat. And then if he's defeated politically, it opens the realms or opens the possibilities up for the legal ways to hold Donald Trump accountable for his many crimes. Those things go back on the table because Donald Trump is running to be president of the United States, if for no other reason than to prevent himself from going to jail. I don't think it's because he enjoys the job. There's no evidence that he did the job, number one, particularly well, or number two, was particularly engaged. It's purely about the status as president of the United States, where he gets a get out of jail free card. That's his motivation. So let's deprive him of that by beating him at the ballot box in November, and then allow the justice system to take its course. But I want to play a couple more clips as well. In which I think in this next one, if I'm not mistaken, it's either an exchange between Jenna Ellis, disgraced, disbarred former Trump attorney who helped Trump try to steal the 2020 election. She was Rudy Giuliani's sidekick, you may recall. It's either this clip or this is the clip in which Piers Morgan brings up the really incendiary things that Donald Trump had to say about Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden earlier today after the assassination attempt.
Let me tell you what he's focused on. He just posted on X. The rhetoric lies as exemplified by the false statements made by Comrade Kamala Harris during the rigged and highly partisan ABC debate, and all the ridiculous lawsuits specifically designed to inflict damage on Joe's and Kamala's political opponent, me, have taken politics in our country to a whole new level of hatred, abuse, and distrust. Because of his communist left rhetoric, the bullets are flying, and it will only get worse. And then he goes on ranting about other stuff. I mean, Louise Mensch, when Trump does this kind of thing.
I think he's right, Piers. But hold on, I think he's right in that, because when people are suggesting on the left that he's a literal threat to democracy, then it's consistent with their worldview that they want to take him out. I mean, they have had the rhetoric of get Trump literally since 2015. They haven't done it out.
So, again, and you're about to see an exchange between Jenna Ellis and Joe Walsh. But again, see, this is what I'm saying. Jenna Ellis was on here criticizing the rhetoric employed by Democrats against Trump. It's too incendiary. It's too inflammatory. We got to tone down the temperature. Then when Piers Morgan hits her with a direct quote from Trump, in which he's certainly not dialing down the temperature, he's blaming without evidence that President Biden and Vice President Harris are responsible and using incendiary rhetoric to describe them. Jenna Ellis says, well, that's different. That's true. But Democrats say that about Trump being an authoritarian threat to democracy. So which is it? Again, I don't mind if Donald Trump has repeatedly referred to President Biden and Vice President Harris as threats to democracy. I think that's ridiculous. I think he has no basis for that. Certainly the basis to call Trump a threat to democracy is infinitely more robust than anything Trump can proffer in defense of his claim that Biden and Harris are. But he has every right to say it, right? So again, I understand that there's some ambiguity here, some gray area there. But per usual, what happens is MAGA Republicans want to be able to say whatever they want, whenever they want, about whomever they want, with impunity, no restrictions, in the name of free speech. But you can't say anything at any time, no matter how well defended, about Donald Trump because, I don't know, because they think that it's some sort of incitement, even though Trump himself has a much richer history of incitement to violence than any modern political figure. I digress, but I think it's just worth pointing out the hypocrisy. So let me play one more clip here. I think of Joe Walsh firing back, proverbially speaking, metaphorically speaking, against Jenna Ellis.
I believe Trump is a threat to democracy. I don't want to see Donald Trump taken out. I condemned what happened yesterday. I can condemn what happened yesterday and still believe Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. Don't say that those of us who do believe he is a threat want to take him out. Come on.
Well, so the difference
Yes.
is, though, saying
Yes.
that he's a threat to democracy, like Kamala Harris did on the debate stage, what she was saying, being vague, was not specifying that she wanted to take him out at the ballot box.
Yes.
And so when you
Yes.
get these
May I just-
lunatics
yes, may I-
that
may I
are
come in?
taking
Jenna,
bullet
bring
shots
in-
at him,
Over-talking me.
you're just incentivizing
All right,
them.
don't
That
all
needs
talk
to
over each
stop.
other. Let me bring in Louise. Yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. Honestly, calling Kamala Harris a communist is just as bad as calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy. And I've been persuaded for once
That's not
by
true, because she
Joe. I've been
actually is. Her
persuaded by
policies
Joe.
are communist. What do you think
shut up,
redistribution of debt and
what
wealth
we
is?
should
That's
be able
communism.
to do
She's
is
an
to
avowed
have
Marxist.
a full and frank debate. A full and frank debate where Donald Trump, if he wants to, he can call Kamala Harris a communist. He can say that she's whatever. She's like Comrade Kamala. He's literally calling her a Russian Stalinist, whatever. Jimmy Dore retweeted a conspiracy
her
theory that the
worldview, though.
intelligence services were behind this assassination. Just this morning, Jimmy Dore retweeted that. People have got to be able to say what they want to say during an election. And Joe is right. If we had enough security, this wouldn't be a problem. And you can.
So there you go. Again, note Jen Ellis. Well, it's different because Kamala Harris is a communist. I have no idea what she's talking about. And I've not heard the vice president advocate for, government seizing the means of production from and effectively abolishing private business and corporations, just the corporate sector, period. But apparently to Jenna Ellis, communism is when you have a progressive tax plan. Communism is when you forgive student debt. That is communism to her. So again, that's fine. If you want to call Kamala Harris a communist, I think it's stupid. I don't think you can defend it adequately, but fair enough. I'm going to continue to call Donald Trump a threat to democracy because he is, and I will always win that argument because there's far more evidence that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy than Kamala Harris is a communist, but you're free to make that case, period. Again, it just goes back to, at the end of the day, MAGA Republicans are snowflakes who demand that the opposition be held to different and higher standards than they are willing to hold themselves to, and that is pathetic, and it should be called relentlessly out. And again, circling back, as much as it pains me, some mild kudos to Piers Morgan for at least being principled enough in this most recent episode to specifically and at length point out some examples of Donald Trump's own incendiary rhetoric and not just giving him a total pass, and actually confronting the Trump supporting guests on the panel with the fact that Donald Trump is guilty of the very things that he is complaining about now. Good stuff. More like this, please. Perhaps by the end of this election, Piers Morgan will in fact become the principled nonpartisan journalist he claims to be, in which he holds both sides to the same standard. And when one side transgresses more than the other, he will actually, respond accordingly. In the meantime, you let me know what you think in the comments.